Did you know a seemingly minor accounting change could, well, pave the way for billions in phantom profits and eventually trigger one of the biggest corporate collapses in history?
It's pretty staggering when you look back.
Yeah. Today, we're exploring the early stages of Enron's journey, long before the infamous downfall. We want to understand those seemingly small decisions that had these huge, unforeseen consequences.
Right. We've been looking through Kurt Eichenwald's Conspiracy of Fools to piece together those crucial turning points.
Exactly. And it's a bit like, that YouTube channel, Mindful Moments. They use AI to analyze books and really make you think critically.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of what we're doing here, dissecting these historical events to see what insights we can pull out.
Okay, so let's get into it. Where do we even begin with early Enron?
It's fascinating because even before Fasto was really a big name, way back in 1986, there were signs. Internal auditors found these misunderstandings.
Misunderstandings. That sounds a bit gentle.
Well, that's how it was framed. Mistakes in trading activities that basically inflated profits for the next year, for 1987.
Okay, so cooking the books early on, even if small scale, and Lay's reaction.
Ken Lay said something like, this is obviously not the type of thing we want to have happen, but he framed it more as, a misunderstanding, not the right way to achieve their goals, not quite a never do this again moment.
So sort of brushing it under the rug a bit, setting a tone maybe.
You could argue that. It suggests maybe a certain tolerance for bending the rules if it helped meet targets. These huge failures rarely start with a big, dramatic crime.
Right, it's more like small compromises, a reluctance to face uncomfortable facts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Downplaying these financial irregularities. It sort of sets a precedent, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Then there was the Transco acquisition. That was another big moment, right?
Huge. Lay finds out Transco hadn't properly accounted for these take-or-pay gas contracts.
Okay, remind us what those are.
Basically, Transco had agreed to buy and pay for a certain amount of gas, whether they could actually use it or sell it or not.
Ah, okay, so if demand or price dropped.
Precisely, which it did, with oil prices falling. Transco was suddenly on the hook for gas they couldn't sell profitably. It could have been, catastrophic. Bankruptcy wasn't out of the question.
Wow, so what did Lay do? Just hide it?
No, and this is where you see that early innovative streak. Instead of just papering over the cracks, he pushed for something totally new, a spot market for natural gas.
Spot market?
Yeah.
Meaning buying and selling gas for immediate delivery, like stocks?
Essentially, yes. It completely shifted the traditional long-term contract model. It was a radical solution to a potentially disastrous problem.
So it shows that early Enron wasn't just about, dotty accounting. There was real innovation there, too.
Absolutely. A real willingness to think differently, to embrace big changes, even under pressure. Lay saw this massive problem and envisioned a whole new market structure. That's pretty impressive.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing, was it? After the big merger with Enron, things got tense.
Oh, yeah. There was this reception in Houston, September 85, I think, right after the H&G deal that merged them. And apparently some directors were furious.
About what? The deal itself?
Partly the deal, the debt they took on, but also rumors, whispers of a secret deal between Lay and the Internorth CEO, Senor, to move the headquarters to Houston, ditching Omaha.
Ooh, that would ruffle some feathers. Did they confront Lay?
Senor denied any secret deal, but yeah, the directors wanted Lay to confirm it right then and there that night. It shows there were already tensions, maybe a lack of complete trust, even that early.
That kind of unease, that disconnect between Lay's vision and maybe the board's comfort zone.
Yeah.
You can see how that could fester.
Definitely. So you have these financial irregularities being sort of downplayed and internal tensions bubbling up, and then you get the arrival of a key figure.
Jeff Skilling.
Jeff Skilling comes over from McKinsey, December 1988. He was actually reluctant at first, apparently.
Why? Didn't he see the potential?
He saw the internal fighting, that whole Houston versus Omaha headquarters battle was still raging. For a star consultant like him, that kind of internal conflict was maybe a red flag.
Makes sense. But they convinced him. What was his big brief?
To figure out Enron's strategy in this newly deregulated gas pipeline market, how could they make money now that the old rules were changing?
And he came up with the gas bank.
The famous gas bank, yeah. It sounds simple now, maybe, but it was revolutionary then.
Explain it again. How did it work?
The idea was to turn Enron itself into a kind of intermediary, like a bank, but for gas. Producers could deposit their gas with Enron, and customers could borrow it. Enron would manage the risk, smooth out supply and demand, and take a cut.
So moving beyond just owning pipes.
Way beyond. Becoming a market maker, a trading entity. And the real eureka moment, as Eichenwald puts it, was figuring out how to construct a long-term gas contract at a fixed price, something that seemed impossible before.
Okay, so that allowed them to manage price risk for customers.
Exactly. And for Enron to profit from managing that risk and trading around those positions, it was the foundation for their move into complex energy trading.
And that's where Andrew Fastow enters the picture, right? He comes in around 1990.
Yep, hired by Skilling. Apparently, Skilling was really impressed just looking at his resume. Fastow had experience in leveraged buyouts, LBOs.
Using debt to buy companies.
Right. And a track record of making profits in complex finance. Skilling reportedly made the decision to hire him very quickly.
Which tells you something about the direction things were heading.
It really does. It underscores this growing focus on financial engineering, using complex structures, deals, not just physical assets, to drive profit. Fastow's skill set fit perfectly with where Skilling wanted to take the company.
And this is where the accounting starts getting really creative.
Aggressive.
Aggressive is a good word. In the early 90s, Enron adopted mark-to-market accounting. Now, this was actually approved by regulators at the time. It wasn't illegal initially. Mark-to-market, meaning they could book the estimated future profit from a long-term deal immediately, right away.
Exactly. Instead of booking profit year by year as the cash actually came in, they could report the entire estimated profit of, say, a 20-year deal in year one.
Wow. That sounds like a recipe for inflated numbers.
Well, it certainly created a huge gap between reported earnings, which look fantastic, and the actual cash flow, which might not arrive for years, if ever.
Because the deals might not pan out as expected.
Precisely. And it created this intense pressure internally. To keep reporting that amazing growth, they constantly needed to do more deals, bigger deals, to book new future profits today.
A treadmill, almost.
A very dangerous treadmill. And this wasn't just happening domestically. Think about Rebecca Mark's international power projects around 92.
Right, like the Dobhol plant in India. Huge ambition.
Huge ambition, huge upfront investments, but also huge risks. Political instability, financial uncertainty. Dobhol eventually got scrapped, costing Enron a fortune. These projects looked great on paper with mark-to-market, but the reality was often much messier.
And didn't someone actually raise concerns about this accounting early on? A journalist?
Yes, Bethany McLean, writing for Forbes in May 1993. She pointed out exactly this risk that Enron needed, this ever-increasing number of contracts just to sustain growth because of mark-to-market.
What was the reaction?
Largely dismissed by Wall Street analysts. The Enron growth story was just too compelling, the innovation narrative too strong. Her warnings got drowned out.
It shows how hype can sometimes blind people to underlying risks, doesn't it?
Definitely. And problems weren't just overseas. Even in North America, by late 94, internal people like Amanda Martin were finding issues.
What kind of issues?
Power projects built on, frankly, poor judgment. Overestimating demand, ignoring technical problems. A consultant's report even confirmed major issues at a plant in Richmond, Virginia.
So inside the company, some people were seeing the cracks.
Yes, absolutely. Pockets of concern were definitely emerging. But again, these warnings seem to have been downplayed or just didn't make it high enough up the chain with enough force.
Meanwhile, Fastow is rising. What was his focus initially?
Well, there's a story about him wanting to knock Skilling's socks off with a great narrative for their business plan, even when maybe the plan itself wasn't fully baked yet.
So perception over substance.
Perhaps starting that way. His early role involved actively seeking out deals within Enron, where his finance group could play a role, structure things, and generate profit on paper, carving out his territory.
Before we get too far into Fastow, wasn't there another earlier scandal? Valhalla.
Yes, the Valhalla oil trading unit. That blew up even earlier. Two traders, Bourget and Mastrani, were charged with fraud and tax crimes, basically shifting profits around improperly in the oil market.
And Les' reaction that time?
He made a very strong statement then, something like, "We will never again risk Enron's credibility without first making sure we thoroughly understand the risks."
A commitment he didn't quite stick to, looking back.
Sadly, no. It's another one of those moments, a potential turning point, where stronger controls or a different culture might have emerged, but didn't.
And Fastow's early structured finance deals started raising eyebrows internally, too, like with Chuco.
Right. Chuco was one of the early special purpose entities, these off-balance sheet vehicles. And people like Ronald Aston, an Enron lawyer, reportedly felt uncomfortable.
Why?
Concerns about Fastow's deep involvement and the potential for him to personally profit from these deals that were meant to benefit Enron. The lines between the company's interests and executives' personal interests were starting to blur.
So, putting it all together, these early days show a company that was undeniably innovative, ambitious,
Absolutely driven.
but you also see these hints, these early warning signs, the aggressive accounting push, the downplaying of problems, the potential for conflicts of interest.
Yeah, the pressure cooker environment was building. The need for constant, rapid growth fueled by these complex, sometimes opaque financial instruments, it really laid the groundwork for the instability that came later.
It really makes you think. And just like the kind of analysis you see on mindful moments or that we try to do here, understanding these foundational decisions, these early steps, is so crucial.
It is, because you could potentially recognize similar patterns elsewhere, even today. You see how a culture that rewards hyperaggression and financial wizardry, maybe without equally strong checks and balances.
Can create the conditions for disaster, even unintentionally at first.
Exactly. Which brings up a big question, doesn't it? How often do these seemingly technical or minor decisions, maybe buried deep in finance or strategy meetings,
Yeah.
how often do they contain the seeds of a company's greatest success?
Or its most catastrophic failure.
Yeah.
A really sobering thought to end on. You've been listening to our exploration of Enron's early formative years.
Hope you found it insightful.
Please subscribe if you'd like to hear more analyses like this. Share it with friends or colleagues who might find it valuable.
And if you want to go deeper, consider grabbing a copy of Conspiracy of Fools. We'll put a link in the show notes.
And most importantly, keep asking questions. Keep thinking critically about the information you encounter every single day. Thanks for listening.